I hope you all don't mind if I pull a Marco Rubio here.
Okay. My question's for Lauren. My question is, almost every mainstream media outlet that I've noticed talking about you has mentioned you as either alt-right or far-right. I want to know how you feel about these labels being put onto you and on people in our realm in general. And should we be doing something to say, hey, stop defaming us?
So asking them to stop has never worked. The media will lie, and they will lie, and they will slander, and it will continue. But to apply these labels to myself, I've become very careful about applying anything to myself because these terms change. They change meaning. Conservative certainly doesn't mean conservative anymore. They haven't conserved a damn thing, not even the definition of their own name. The alt-right used to just mean kind of alternative media sphere before the Trump election and during the Trump election. I thought one of the greatest things that Trump did, actually, was after Charlottesville, the media came up to him and said, Trump, will you condemn the entire alt-right? And instead of Trump just saying yes, he looked at the media and said, define alt-right for me. Why did he say that? Because everyone from Adolf Hitler to Ben Shapiro gets called alt-right. And I can tell you right now, Ben Shapiro is not alt-right. So to apply any of those labels to myself, I would not do that, simply because they change definition too much. You can judge me by the opinions that I tell you. I am a truth seeker, that is all.
And the way to solve it is just stop giving them money. Like no, seriously, I mean, catch a cable, put your ad blockers on, read over people's shoulders if you have to, just stop giving them money, and you'd be amazed at how quickly they come to reason when they are facing hunger.
The time for arguments is over.
It's close.
On that comment of money, if a government is defined largely by their monetary policy, and if we are facing a potential future of a cryptocurrency sort of world where there's, say Bitcoin that everybody in the world uses, how do you think that could affect this multiculturalism and sort of nation identity?
Well, multiculturalism is founded upon the free money provided by central banking. This is why this absolutely unreal scenario is kept propped up. Like in Sweden, it takes 14 taxpayers to pay for one migrant. Do you think that would be possible if it wasn't possible for the government to print money, to go into debt, to do anything to avoid passing along the true costs of multiculturalism to the taxpayer? Now, it still shows up. In Sydney, since 2007, anyone want to guess the percentage of increases in house prices? 98%. 98%. And that's the result of immigration. The traffic is insane, access to healthcare is insane, educational resources are stretched to the breaking point. Because immigration, where do they go? They don't go and plow the back 40 in the outback. They don't go hunt kangaroos with tranquilizer darts. They come and squat right in the cities, a lot of times on welfare. So the bill is not given to the taxpayer, so we're not able to give a rational allocation. This is what all this virtue signaling is that if it doesn't cost anyone for anyone to do these things because the costs are all deferred and indebted, then you can come up with these mad schemes. But if people were actually given the bill for immigration and multiculturalism, it would stop tomorrow.
So I'll just quickly start with a statistic. Between 2011 and 2016, according to the ABS, we have had an increase of 660 Europeans who live here, and we've had 500,000 for the third world. What would you say to that, I suppose, and how would you suggest that people start actually getting an action? Because we have probably about 30 years before we have up to 4.5 million more foreign migrants who come here, and we're going to be completely outnumbered because they breed far more than us.
Well, learn from South Africa. No, South Africa, at the end of the Second World War, blacks and whites were about equal. Under apartheid, the black population grew at 800%. The white population did not. When you bring in people from the third world, a lot of them will go on welfare and they'll have a lot of kids. It's just a fact. Birth rate in Africa is over 5 on average. 5 on average. And that's without the welfare state pumping money into people to have more children. It is a demographic suicide. For God's sakes, Australia, close your damn borders. What are you, crazy? You've got oceans, you don't need to build a wall. God has provided you a lovely moat, and we're all going to need some place to come, so please close your borders. No, just close your borders. You got to vote for people, sorry.
We have the luxury, certainly, in Australia, in Canada, and Northern Europe, to be either bordered on other first world nations or on water. And we really, because we have this luxury, we take everything for granted. And you have all these people chanting, open borders, refugees welcome. And to your point of there being so few Europeans coming over, I've never understood this. You have all these individuals. We were just at a protest earlier today, you may have mentioned it, for white South African refugees. And there were people across the street chanting and screaming, no, 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 not these ones, basically. And it always makes me wonder, you've got refugees that speak the language, love the culture, are hard workers, are going to bring in industry and money into your country. Why don't you want them? You've got migrants that aren't from refugee nations that are going to drain your resources, and you are begging to have your borders open. I'm convinced that this is the collective suicide of Western nations.
Well, you should check out Lauren's great video and go into the no-go zone. I pretty much guarantee you that if you take in the white Christian Boers, you won't get a no-go zone. You'll get a, oh no, I'm in the Boer zone. They might feed me. They might chat. They might be grateful. They might have jobs. Oh no. That's who you want. You won't get a no-go zone, you'll get a let's go zone.
Welcome to Australia, guys. My question is about the political spectrum. People always describe the left as communist and then the right as Nazis, but we know Nazis are National Socialists. So what would you describe as the far right? Like the actual far right? If Nazis are socialists, what would be the far right?
Don't let your enemies define your terms. They do it very carefully to have you compromise and wiffle-waffle in the middle, reject things like left and right. I use them occasionally just for convenience sake as sort of bookmarks, but there's voluntarism and there's violence. That's all there is. There's voluntarism and there's violence. Communism, National Socialism, fascism, these are all coercive mechanisms for enforcing human interactions at the point of a gun. You want voluntarism. In the same way you want lovemaking, not rape. You want charity, not welfare. And you want continuation of your civilization rather than a giant coercive government program called immigration. So reject the labels. We want voluntarism, not violence. That's it.
One of the best things I think we achieved during the election was changing this left-right debate to politician tell me, you are either a globalist or you are a nationalist. And we changed that debate. And you can change it. You are either an authoritarian or you're a freedom lover.
Nationalism is the individualism of collectivism. It's what we've got at the moment and we should preserve it.
Stefan, as someone who speaks extensively on the importance of parenting, how significant do you see the role of the nuclear family unit in relation to solving the problems of the West? And if we could raise a whole generation of children with an ACE score of 0, how substantial of an impact do you think that would have in solving some of these problems?
If we truly loved our children, we would say no to national debts, of course. We would say no to multiculturalism, of course. If we truly loved our children, we would not have massive unfunded liabilities that is going to be extracted from their economic futures, turning them into financial serfs to foreign banksters. If we loved our children, we would tell the truth about things like race and IQ. Why do I talk about race and IQ? Because I absolutely love my daughter, and I will not, if I have the strength to stop it, let her be raised in a world where she gets called racist for for the simple biological fact that sub-Saharan blacks have an IQ in the 70s. That's not her fault. And I will not have her called a racist for biological facts that are far beyond her control. If we love our children, we defend our borders, we save our culture, we speak the truth. And that's why parenting is so important. The boomers' selfishness and narcissism as a whole, and materialism, and desire to look good rather than do good has given us a giant mess to inherit, and we gotta fix it.
Hey, Stefan. I'm an immigrant, and I'm highly skilled, and I moved to this country because this country would give me an opportunity. So I've seen in the past you say that this is bad for third world countries because it's skillful people leaving is like you get an unskilled country basically. And tonight you've mentioned the Aboriginals and you said, oh, brilliant Aboriginals were born and crushed. So my question to you is, why is it good to stay there and be crushed instead of leaving to a more accepting place?
I'm sorry, I didn't quite follow the question. If you could say it again.
Okay. In the past, you've said that...
No, just give me the last bit of the question.
Okay, so why is it better for you, or for me, to stay there in my culture and be crushed there, and for my country, somehow, than to come here and flourish here?
And which is your country?
Brazil.
Brazil. Well, it's not better for you. But why should the West care about what's best for you if you're in Brazil? No, seriously, I'm sorry. I understand why you want to come to a Western country.
That's not the question. The question is, how is it better for the country, for my country of origin, for me to stay there?
Well, do you care about political freedom?
Yeah.
Are you helping Brazil achieve political freedom?
That's impossible.
Well, if it's impossible, then we shouldn't take anyone from Brazil now, should we?
Well, it depends.
No, doesn't depend.
You should
No.
judge people as individuals.
No. You can't treat people as individuals. Of course not, because we all have countries of origins. Everybody makes collective decisions all the time.
Well, sure, but...
And there is also regression to the mean, right? So if you take a really tall Chinese guy, his kids aren't going to be as tall. And this is just the same thing. If you take high IQ people from low IQ countries, their kids are on the whole going to be less smart, and you can see this. Very smart Muslims who wanted to be free of theocracy came to, say, England, and their children are more radicalized, and their children are more radicalized because of regression to the mean. These are just basic facts which I wish weren't there, but are there. So of course we have to make collective decisions.
Tough act to follow. It seems to me that multiculturalism is a religion, and it seems to me that multiculturalism filled the void where Christianity used to exist. Do you think it's possible to get rid of multiculturalism without replacing it with a different religion? Do you think it's possible to actually make valid arguments, make strong enough arguments to people like this man here and to sub-Saharan Africans that multiculturalism is wrong for this and this reason? Or do we have to go back? Do we have to go back to when the West was at its most powerful and most unified? And that was when we all went to church, when we all had the Bible in every classroom and had the 10 Commandments in every classroom, the rule book of our civilization. So is there a way to get rid of that without going back to what made Australia great?
Everyone is always looking for a purpose. They're always looking for a meaning, and you're completely correct. I mean, Nietzsche pointed this out long ago. God is dead. We must find something to fill this void. And lots of people think Nietzsche invented nihilism, and he just identified it as a problem and said, no, this really sucks. We need to find a solution because God really did provide us with something. Now, multiculturalism, you're correct. To an extent, it is kind of like a religion, one where people just will defend it to the death because it's given them these pillars to live their life by, an idea of what is good and what is bad. It is good to not be a bigot. It is good to say refugees are welcome. It is good to be a Black Lives Matter activist, feminist, whatever you want to call it. And then they also, unfortunately, to have this realm of values and religion that they've created, they have to create a Satan. And those that question their multicultural world are their Satan. Ah, yes, that's me. And they have to villainize us. And that's what really sucks about this, is because even if we have great arguments, in order for their religion of multiculturalism to continue, they must always see us as evil. And that's why the media will spin themselves in circles, lying and lying and lying about us instead of actually acknowledging our arguments. Because if they acknowledge our arguments, then their whole worldview collapses. And that is a very scary thing. Imagine living your whole life with these pillars that gave you an identity, told you what is good and what is bad, that you have been pursuing everything in your life. You pursued a feminist degree because that was the highest good you could do, and then you find out it's all not true, and those pillars are taken away. That could induce psychosis. That could induce craziness in you. You don't know what to do with your life, what to make of it. Maybe you're even so far along that you're 35 years old and you've been just inundated with this religion of feminism that you haven't had kids and you're up in an apartment by yourself with your cats and a glass of wine. Changing your mind at that point means you have to admit you've decided to live a lonely and sad life. So not a lot of people are going to take a step away from that religion, and we can just keep trying to put the facts out there and say, if you don't do this, you can fix your own life, or even if you're past that point, you can at least save the future, and for other people, you can help them.
Yeah, I would also say that the only part of multiculturalism that matters is the third syllable. It's not a religion, if by religion you mean Christianity, because you can leave Christianity and people don't try to destroy your life. You try to leave Islam, the punishment for apostasy in Islam is death. And if you try and get out of multiculturalism, they will try to destroy your life. They will physically attack you. It's a cult. It's not a religion, if by religion you mean Christianity, which is a gentle exhortation to follow Jesus. And if you decide not to, they won't try and destroy your life. They will pray for you. They will try to win you back with good deeds. It is a cult. It is a cult, and this is what happens when you lose religion. You don't gain atheism. Atheism is also a modern cult that worships the state. Multiculturalism is a very dangerous, dogmatic belief system that tries to destroy its apostates, and this is why a lot of the left like both multiculturalism and Islam.
Cult is one letter away.
Yeah. Which is also a religion to some. The Church of please.
Hi, Lauren. I saw your video when you actually went to Lakemba. I actually only live a short drive from that area. I'm actually from a town that actually celebrates multiculturalism as well. And ironically, there are a lot of clubs that are made by Bosnians, Croatians. If multiculturalism is such a great thing, then where the hell is Yugoslavia right now? Why doesn't it exist anymore?
Yeah, okay.
Oh, I have a lot of Croatian friends, first of all, and they are a very, very tribal people. I'll tell you that much. You see a Serb in a bar, and I'm like, all right, guys, let's go to another bar. Yeah, but that's absolutely it. People have different... It balkanized exactly for the reason that right now there's balkanization happening in Australia with places like Lakemba, because people have different ideas of what they want their future to be, what they want their religion to be, what they want their identity, their children's values and beliefs to be, and that's entirely fair, that they want their own sovereignty, that they want to decide what their future is going to be, separate from others with different ideas and forcing it on them. And why we are doing that in a nation that has already decided its future, Australia, why we are inviting in people to create further balkanization, I can't tell you for the life of me why we're doing it. Forced collective suicide of Western nations, once again.
Yeah, and diversity is what you inflict upon enemies, right? I mean, if you want to weaken your enemy, you set your enemy against each other. You know, we had an interview with the New Zealand team yesterday, and the reporter asked me, the first question was, why do you think that reporters are such a problem? And I said, because you all lack diversity. And it's true. I said, you know, like, I mean, you're all overwhelmingly leftist, and if I were to apply for a job in your organization, you'd never, ever give me a chance, because you hate diversity with a passion. There's a monomania of the leftists in academia, in Hollywood, in television, in the newspaper, newsprint, and so on. They're all leftists, and they hate multiculturalism. That's why they inflict it on everyone else, because it weakens them while strengthening them with the monoculture.
Yeah, I was just so we're having a by-election today, is that right? So we're in the midst of that. I was just wondering what you thought about the political realm as a place that can cause a significant transformation for a nation. And do you have faith in that? I mean, you guys are obviously in the cultural sphere and talking about free speech and political issues, but actually getting people into positions of power, enough of maybe a coalition to get rid of the Human Rights Commission or get rid of the Anti-Discrimination Tribunal or any of these sort of horrible organisations that have cropped up over the last 30, 40 years or something like that. So just wanted to get your input on that. Thanks.
Yeah, so I used to be very skeptical of every single politician. They were all garbage. They were all... Can I get some of that?
I think we found the national flower of Australia.
And I didn't trust a single one of them, and I was like, nothing is going to change through politics. And that's why I went into media, because clearly the media was the ones, they were the ones influencing the people. And to an extent, that's true. To an extent, the media decide who we vote for, but you still need people to vote for, even if you win the whole media over. And this is something that the left have done very, very well. They did their long walk through the institutions. They gained all of our schools, they gained all of our media, they gained all of our political positions, and they got all of the little councils that no one wanted to be on, all the different aspects of socialized government programs. They conquered those and run them all. And the right were too busy saying, I just want to be with my family, I just want to go to church, I just want to live my life, please leave me alone, while the left was taking over all of our institutions. And it's our turn to go in and have our long walk through the institutions, not even for the sake of taking it over so we can impose our own laws and throw people out of helicopters when we don't like them, but just for the sake of having half and half, at least having different opinions in there so people can make well-informed, thorough decisions. And when I went to the European Union earlier this year, I got a chance to meet a lot of politicians when I was banned from the United Kingdom. They invited me to come speak, and there were tons of politicians in the belly of that beast trying to take it down. And I had never heard of them because I had spent so long just calling them and not actually listening to what they had to say and trying to find and seek out politicians that supported my ideas. So alt media, everyone that's in this alternative sphere needs to go and find those politicians that are speaking for us and really prop them up.
I also wanted to mention that no good Christian will subtitle this event. I just wanted to mention that right now.
I'm pretty active in politics. And my main motivation is that I hate evil. I believe I can hate evil. Now, I hate our politicians that are treacherous, lying traitors who are defending evil. Please tell me something constructive that I can go away with, but I can control this bitterness and hate within my heart, because I just think our future for our children is just go so bleak. It just horrifies me.
A hatred of evil is a virtue. A hatred of evil is a virtue. It's one of the ways in which we guide ourselves towards goodness. You know, I mean, there's a push and a pull to virtue. And we want to be drawn towards the light, but we're also fleeing and fighting the darkness. So I applaud your hatred of evil. You have shared that with many great men, from Plato to Jesus to Socrates, all the way forward. You don't want to let yourself be consumed by that, of course, right? There's the old Nietzschean quote, which is that when you hunt monsters, you must be very careful you do not become a monster. And so fighting evil with great joy is what really defeats evil. There's one thing, you know, the question is why no protesters tonight? Zero, for the first time on this entire tour, and we've had some pretty feral mobs at these tours. And I think one of the reasons is because the leaked videos of what we've been doing here are out. This is a very positive place to be. You know, this is a very great crowd. It's positive. It's positive energy, it's truth-telling, it's relief. It's, you know, when we talk about the white guilt and the unnecessary, don't you feel the burden lift? Isn't there like pleasure and joy in this? And I think the joy that we have in fighting evil is what actually defeats it even more than the fight. It's the joy that does it. Nietzsche called philosophy the gay science, meaning the joyful science, the joyful discipline. Fight with a song in your heart and a sword in your hand, but it is a song that wins eventually. Thank you.
hopefully I can keep this succinct. But so fascism, communism, they're ideologies, and Jordan Peterson, who everybody here should be familiar with, has said that ideologies are like crippled religions. They're missing like an arm and a leg. They're not complete. But it seems that a lot of people have forgotten that liberalism is also an ideology. And it's like the first ideology, and it's so, we live within it. Like all our mainstream politicians seem to be like, they're all liberals, right? Yeah, sorry. So what do you think comes after this? We have to move past ideologies. What comes after liberalism? Because I don't know, but I really want to.
No, go ahead.
Yeah. So obviously, fascism failed. It was shut down. Communism obviously failed. A lot of these ideas have failed, but liberalism also has its own issues, and that's something that really frustrates me, because I talk about it a lot in my videos, and people get very angry with me. How dare you criticize this holy cow of ours? And I say, look, liberalism is killing itself. And yes, this is the thing too. I criticize capitalism as well. I say it's created us to be consumeristic, to kind of have rejected a lot of the more spiritual side of our lives, to have rejected finding meaning and purpose, and made us very selfish. That doesn't mean that we need to be communists. That doesn't mean that we need to get rid of capitalism. It just means that capitalism may be the best of the worst, but there are still problems that we need to explore. And it goes for the same for liberalism. Liberalism is certainly better than fascism and communism, has provided far better civilizations than them. However, we are seeing and witnessing the problems of it right now, and it is our duty to be willing, and it is our duty to critique this ideology, even though it's what we're living in right now. And even though we talk about the left and we tell them, you're a liberal, you don't believe in free speech, you don't believe in classical liberalism, we still have to be willing to always critique our own ideas in order to look towards the future. Because right now, we are on a downhill spiral. We are on a train that is going off a cliff, and that cliff is the end result of liberalism's tolerance and freedoms, and those are great things, but how do we avoid this cliff? We got to talk about it. Even though this has been a successful project so far, there's still this end that we are looking at.
Yeah, I would say also that the one thing you can tell about an ideologue is they tend to talk rather than do. One of the things that I very much admire about Christianity is Jesus' exhortation to sell what you have, give your money to the poor, go amongst the downtrodden, and so on, to act. When you act in a virtuous manner, you don't need ideology because you're actually doing something. If you look at things like mass migration, the people who praise it are the people who don't live among the migrants, right? They don't take migrants into their homes. It's all just a bunch of noise and nonsense. And we have lost, with religion, it exhorted you, Christianity would exhort you to do good in your community, to do good in your neighborhood. It is by your deeds that you shall know them. Ideology means that you can type and think you're doing good, that you can yell and think you're doing good, and it is a petition to a politician to do something unholy in the name of virtue rather than act in a personal manner to make the world a better place. So for me, when I'm actually out in the world doing good, I feel no addiction to ideology, and people who'd rather seem good than do good are addicted to language rather than deeds, and that to me is a great danger. We have to exhort people to be good and then let go of labels because they're actually doing the right thing.
Hi Lauren, hi Stefan. I'm Brian from Sydney. I did a call-in show with you last year, somewhere in November. Now, the question I want to ask is, given that science has been taught in the way that science is being taught in public schools, especially, to make what the Bible look stupid, and now you have seen that Christianity has become almost like, you believe in God creating the world, and this society is what we have, would you not consider the scientific method that they have used to try to disprove God to be suspicious, especially given that the people that we have now replaced with to take on secularism and multiculturalism, etc., that perhaps they have an agenda in mind when they replace the education system?
An agenda for sure. It's generally kind of instinctual. The human capacity for dominance is often instinctual. We see it in bonobo monkeys. We see it in a wide variety of other apes which don't have abstract philosophies. But to the Christians in the audience, I will say this. You have a province called faith. Do not be lured into the province called science. This is not the province. Like, let science have physics, let science have biology. It doesn't matter. What you have is faith. And the attempt to find rational proofs for the existence of God is going to draw you into a realm where you're going to lose. And where you have to keep hammering the atheists is the source of their values. And don't accept all this Darwinian stuff and in-group preference and altruism and so on. So no, where are your moral absolutes? That is where atheism falls flat, and that's why, because it falls flat, it has to turn to the power of the state. You can have a big God and a small government. You can have a small God and a big government. And those are the only two choices that we face. So keep hammering them on the source of their ethics and the source of their values. Do not get drawn into logical proofs of God, because that is the province of faith. Don't get distracted. Hit them at their weak spots, because they better put up or shut up when it comes to that.
I would like to tell you that I've been given preference because I'm an old lady. And I want to thank the boys for doing that. I like you both, and I wanted to ask you one thing. I am concerned about the separating voices that are going around now, trying to make women and men equal. We are different, and we are beautifully different. You there, I wouldn't like you to look the same. I prefer your girl and a girl. So, what can we, as older parents or grandmothers, hope for our children not to be pushed into this divisive separation of sexes? I like men to be men. Look, I'm a girl. I was pushed by the men to come out front here. And I like the way the men are different. And I cherish those differences. How can we fight it? How can I tell my granddaughter about that? It's not so much the culturalism, that we can handle it. I came from Italy. It didn't matter. I came integrated here. I learned the language. I brought spaghetti. And I made
Tonight I hope.
And also we took pizza from Italy, and we took other things from America. That's not my concern. We can take the good things and spit out the bad ones. I want to know about the men and women. How can we fight that difference?
I am both charmed and hungry at the same time. I tell you that. Go ahead.
Anyone who loves their daughter will not tell their daughter that she is the exact same as a man. Because to do that is to say, when you go to compete with men in their sphere and you fail, you did so because you suck. Not because you're different. If a woman goes into a men's sporting arena, goes to play hockey, I'm Canadian, so of course that's the one I choose, rugby, whatever it may be, and she's told, you are no different than any of these men here, how is she going to feel about herself? She is going to feel like an absolute and complete failure. The exact same as a man would feel if he were told he was the exact same as a woman and was told to go into a childbirthing contest. I don't think he'd have a very good time. And this is the thing, you always see, of course leftists will never admit that men and women are biologically different, maybe some, but for the most part they just start screaming. But whenever nature really comes down, whenever it's a crisis time, we notice if there's a flood, whatever it may be, you never see the women carrying the men out of the houses. You see the men carrying the women. The feminists, there's a quote, what is it? A woman is never a feminist during a house fire, something like
Something
that.
like that, yeah. It's wartime, you get drafted.
Yes, exactly. So we just need to tell the truth. It's not easy. It may not be easy to tell a little girl, you're different. You're different than men. But I loved the way you put it, to say we are beautifully different.
Yeah.
It used to be something, yes, absolutely. We are not unequal. We are different. We just have different talents and abilities and things that we contribute to the world. And we used to worship women for that. We used to put them on a pedestal and say, you are the creators of life. That is an amazing and a beautiful thing. And now feminists have smacked that down and said, you are the same as men, and we all feel like failures. We all get paid less because we choose to be paid less, except we don't understand how that's actually happening, so we all feel like crap constantly. And it's a horrible, horrible thing. It was much better for women when we were put on pedestals and loved and appreciated for the things that we were genuinely good at. So tell those hard truths, and Not just the hard truths, the easy ones too. The ones where you say, you are beautiful, you're going to be an amazing mother, you're going to be an amazing lover, you are going to contribute so much femininity to this world, which is a wonderful thing. Masculinity is wonderful too, yes.
Yeah, I mean, I was raised with Vive la différence, right? And it's funny, people take their personal dysfunctions and try to make them universal so they can avoid personal responsibility. Like, my mom had a bad divorce, was in a bad marriage, and she was constantly complaining that marriage was bad, that marriage is bad. It's like, no, your marriage was bad. Not the institute. You fail the institution. The institution doesn't fail in and of itself. And when you hear people complain about patriarchy, and they think that they're talking about, like, I guess your single mom chose bad boyfriends. That's all I can tell you about it. Leftist men tend to be terrible. And so leftists complain about men, right? I mean, come on. Bill Clinton, Lord, Anthony Weiner, we got Harvey Weinstein. I mean, you go to a male feminist is like countdown to rape accusation, right? I mean, they're terrible, terrible men. So of course they think all men are predators. It's like, I don't know, widen your interests a little. Find some non-predatory men. You'd be amazed how your ideology can change.
So my question is pretty straightforward. Without communication, we cannot teach people and grow our cause. As we all know, Facebook has suppressed views. It's recently shut down Britain First. There's people in this room that have had pages. I've had pages. As far as I'm concerned, it's what I call a left-wing bigot and ran by fascists. Is there any? Do you have any ideas about trying to use the reach that you currently have, and which will no doubt double in size by the time you get back home? Is there any ideas there to try and get the followers and get people like us to move to a different medium that isn't fascist, that isn't left-wing, so that we can still speak without getting shut down all the time?
I certainly think having a backup platform is good. It's a guerrilla war at the moment, and in a guerrilla war, you don't face the enemy directly. So there's certain things that you can do on social media. You don't call out leftists, because what are they going to do? They're going to go whine and run to mommy and complain that they're being harassed and stalked, and then you're just like, I mean, this is what they're crime bullies, right? Which just means they come at you with a knife, and then you defend yourself with a shield, and they say, he hurt my wrist. I mean, this is what they do, right? So don't call out people individually. Of course, don't go for visible minorities, because then everybody will pile on and call you a racist. Just keep, it's you and the audience. Forget about everyone else. Just go with you and the audience, except for Lauren, who should take on journalists in Australia. That's a totally different matter. But there's rules that you can play by. Are they fair? No, who cares? It's a guerrilla war. We're going to win, but we just have to be smart about it.
Hi guys, thanks for coming to Australia.
Loved you in Fight Club.
Thank you. I'm not supposed to be here. My question is for Steph. I just finished listening to the audiobook of Practical Anarchy. It was outstanding, thank you.
Thank you.
And I just want to ask you, do you still call yourself an anarchist? And what would your vision for multiculturalism be in an anarchist society versus the social democracy that we currently have?
Right. Yes. The anarchist is a label. So for those who don't know, the non-aggression principle is you should not initiate the use of force against others. I have a whole explanation of this in my free book on ethics at freedomainradio.com. And yes, that means that the state is an illegitimate moral enterprise because it exists as a collective of individuals who can initiate the use of force against others. I get that's a ways down the road to deal with. That's generations down the road, which is why I focused so much on parenting. So the conclusion, until people can argue me out of the conclusion stands. That's not up to me. That's just philosophy, and you kind of have to deal with it. So at least I do have to deal with that standpoint. So yeah, that is my ideal. As far as multiculturalism goes, I don't care who comes into a particular geographical area. I just don't want to be forced to pay for them. That's the problem. The problem is not immigration. Immigration is the symptom. That doesn't mean you should keep your borders open. You close your borders so you can get rid of the welfare state. Once you get rid of the welfare state, then people will come for freedom rather than free stuff. The more the merrier.
Hi, thank you both for coming. I'm just wondering, because quite a lot of us here, as soon as we do speak out, we get sometimes liable death threats, with mainly name-calling, but because you guys have received so much more, it's like, how do you guys push past the political threats, the absolute death threats, and keep on going with your great work?
Well, first of all, because of people like you. If no one here showed up because you were all too afraid, there would only be protesters here throwing things at us. It's that strength in numbers. More and more people, it's like the quote I ended my speech on. When more and more people become patriots and the cause begins to succeed, then it'll be a time where no one is afraid to be a patriot. So as these numbers expand, as more people come, it makes me more excited to come to these events. It makes me more confident to speak up as people share my videos, as the message continues to spread. And as for the threats, as for all the name calling that's happening now, that isn't even a tiny inkling of what my ancestors have had to face to fight for our civilization. And it's not even a tiny inkling of what my children and my grandchildren will have to face if I don't speak up now. So it is very, very easy to speak now. Thank you for your question.
I mean, all courage is just forgetting what's at stake. You know, nobody wants to jump out of a plane, but if the plane is crashing, you jump, right? So if you understand what's at stake, the courage is pretty easy. I mean, I know enough about history to know what happens if we lose. We're going to get killed. Like, don't fool yourself for a moment. We've seen this over and over again in the fall of Rome, and the French Revolution, the Russian Revolution, Cambodia's killing fields. I mean, when the leftists get in power, they kill us. So I'll take typing and mean words for now because I know what the alternative is going to be.
Stefan, it's a really great honor to be here.
Thank you.
2 quick questions. At work, I have to deal with crazy liberal coworkers who are always saying things that make no sense and are completely ignorant. And you would just cringe. And I just sit on my ears and I take it because I don't want to get in trouble, potentially. My organization has a policy actually against, talking controversial things in politics. But they act like they own the joint. And do I sit on my ears? Do I just take it? And if I don't take it, if I, express myself, how do I go about doing that? And also, just quickly, how do we deal with mass media brainwashing us with their propaganda?
Quickly, yeah, very quickly. Real quick. How do you undo all? Real quick, go ahead. That's tough, so you take it.
Yeah. No, whenever I'm going to my family dinners, I always get the lecture in the car. Don't you dare talk about politics, Lauren. So I know what it feels like. Because it's always, and we have this conversation all the time, it's always the people who are more reasonable, the people who are willing to have debates that have to shut up for the people who aren't willing to have debates, that will try to get you fired, that will try to wreck your life. And I dealt with this all throughout university as well. I got kicked out of classes. I got terrible grades on essays for disagreeing. And the best way I found to combat that, it may be tempting at times to just be like, screw you guys, facts. But if you're going to get fired from your job, if you're going to get kicked out of your class, there are smarter ways to do it. The Socratic method is amazing. Just get them to answer your questions. You can't get in trouble for asking questions. Can you explain that further? But what about this? What will we now need, like my question, if they're talking about multiculturalism, does that mean we need to have witch doctors at our hospitals, right? And ask it in a very genuine voice. Don't laugh at all, otherwise then you might get in trouble. But you'll find, you'll get people's minds working. And they might even shut up about it too, because they'll find your questions make them think too much and start to erode those pillars of salt and sand they have built up with their ideology. So the Socratic method has worked great for me. You don't have to sit on your hands. You can enjoy watching them spin themselves in circles and turn their brains into spaghetti over your questions.
And if you're in an organization surrounded by leftists, get out. No, seriously. It's going to go down. It's going to, see, this is the, let me give you, I've been an entrepreneur for like 25 years. A very brief life cycle of a company is really smart people get together, produce amazing stuff, end up with a huge amount of influence over society, and then through a bizarre anti-reality space-time portal known as HR, a bunch of leftists come streaming into the company, take it over, try and turn it to political ends. Everyone gets disgusted, leave, the stock price tanks, and some more rational organization takes its place. And then another portal opens up called HR, through which the leftists stream, and just become an entrepreneur, man. Just don't have an HR portal and you'll survive.
Okay, we've got 10 minutes left. I reckon that's going to give us another 4 or 5 questions if we move.
And don't forget, we got book signings, and we'll do the books afterwards for the handshake, selfie, chatty things, so please stay around for that.
This question is for Stefan.
The talk you gave earlier about the dark history of Aboriginal culture, can you recommend a book or a resource that the audience and I can look up?
Yeah, well, I'm not going to give you any one in particular, but when I've got a whole essay, this came from a whole essay which I'm going to publish, and I will include all the sources for all of the research that came into that chat, which was just kind of tip of the iceberg of everything that I read. And so just keep an eye on my channel. We're going to publish that over the next couple of weeks, and the sources will all be there, along with my recommendations for the reading, because there are some really great historians working in that area. Thank you.
My question's for Stefan. So given that in aggregate, the Australian Aboriginal population has an IQ of around 2 standard deviations below the mean, what, in your estimation, would be a viable solution to the difficulties that this population's naturally going to face in creating economic value in the market?
The solution is always freedom. Always freedom. There's, what, $40+ billion being transferred from the whites to the Aborigines at the moment. It's a disaster. It's an absolute disaster. Now, I've not visited Aborigine areas here, but I did spend quite some time in my aforementioned time in the north of Ontario, spending some time on the reservations and seeing what happened there. It is a Dantean hell that is almost beyond description. You've got kids walking around with no pants. They're 3 years old. It's 2 o'clock in the morning. You've got people falling over drunk. I was driving back once from the town. I went in for dinner. I was driving back to the camp that we were in. I'm driving down the road, and I see this woman, this female native, indigenous population woman, just walking down by the side of the road. And I slowed, it's the middle of nowhere, I slowed down and rolled down my window, and are you okay? And she said, well, no. I said, well, what happened? And she said, well, I was in the back of a pickup truck with some other men from the reservation. They wanted blowjobs. I wouldn't give them, so they threw me out of the van into the ditch. And so I got her into the car, and I drove her to the hospital, made sure she got. This is unbelievable hell. This is turning these people over to the care and protection of the state. The state doesn't care about their lives improving. The state needs dependency. This is why the state keeps bringing in poor people, because capitalism keeps getting rid of poor people by putting them in the middle class. So you've got to get these people out from the grip of the government. It's bureaucrats protecting their jobs. It's people protecting a narrative. If they're free, that is the best chance for them over time, for the smartest among them to gain the most resources, to have the most children, to pull them up from this depths of IQ dregs that they're currently tragically stuck at, evolutionarily speaking. Whatever the problem is, give me any oblique problem, the solution is freedom.
First of all, I'm going to say, like my hat.
Loved you in the White House.
So my question was more for Stefan. So it's clear.
Sorry, I'm just going to take my chair. Here. Sorry, please.
Finally, you'll be in a media picture.
Yeah.
It's all right, I'll make
I'm a ghost. Lauren and Shadow are touring Australia.
So it's clear that when it comes to the war of ideas in the Western world, we're making great strides. However, there's what I perceive to be a pervasive fear among a lot of people that I guess struggle, that sort of conflict might turn ugly. I mean, we're under heavy. Do you think that, knowing what you know about Australia, that a similar thing could happen here in due time?
Yeah, no, I think the odds of us getting out of this peacefully are very low. Very low. That doesn't mean that the time for arguments is past. It just means that we better make very good ones. I mean, we have created, in the West, hundreds of millions of people dependent upon the forced redistribution of wealth. And now this has occurred multi-generationally, which means that even genetically, we have created employment-resistant personalities with very little capacity to defer gratification or submit to legitimate authority, the authority of a boss, and so on. And that is a huge mess that we have inherited from, well, really the FDR's 1930 Great Society onwards, in particular LBJ's Great Society, programs of the 1960s and so on. We've inherited an absolutely desperate and giant mess. And getting out of it is going to be such a dangerous and difficult sequence that it is my hope that we get our never again moment out of that. And whenever anyone comes and says, hey, you know, it'd be great for the poor, big giant government programs that entrap them in a permanent underclass, miseducate them, teach them resentment for all the principles of success, and leave them fairly well armed. And people will be like, you know, we did that, and it was pretty horrible. So, no.
Final question.
Yeah, hi, Lauren, Stefan. As a fellow Canadian from Vancouver, sorry, Stefan, she's better looking, but...
What, did you come here to see some Asians from Vancouver?
Yeah, well, I escaped out of Vancouver, but anyway, I'm in Asheville now. Yeah, exactly. My question to both of you guys, is there one thing that really stands out on this tour that you can bring back to the Canadian people from this great country?
No, I think they check your luggage for that, so.
Well, you know, I want to make jokes. VB, you know, little beer thing, koalas, everything. But no, seriously, something that has been amazing that I've experienced here is in Canada, everyone is very politically kind of ambivalent. We talked about even potentially doing a Canadian speaking event, but it seems in Australia, there are so many more people, even if you are the silent majority, even if the media is lying, there are so many more people that are fired up here, that are wearing the Make Australia Great Again hats. And there are people in Canada, but the nation there is so politically ambivalent that they need the push. Here, you have the numbers, you have the people to really change things, and that's a beautiful sight. It's a beautiful sight in Australia, just the love you have for the country, the love you have for your culture, and how much you're pushing back. You're stopping the boats. You've changed things politically. And this is the thing too, Canada and Australia are very similar in a lot of ways. And if you guys can change it, if you can push back your mass immigration, if you've managed to elect politicians, although I agree there are a lot of problems with your current government, still, your point system, your immigration system, you're quite a bit better than Canada right now, but stay vigilant, stay vigilant. I will bring that back to Canadians, though, that there are things we can do to change. It shouldn't be offensive. It shouldn't be considered racist. It shouldn't be considered bigoted to stop the boats or to stop the mass immigration there. Look at the Australians. They did it. They're very similar to us. Although, vice versa, we got rid of our hate speech laws, or our commission.
Human Rights Commission.
The Human Rights Commission. So you can take that from Canadians as well. Get rid of that stuff. Absolutely not.
What I'm taking out is that these are the greatest audiences I have ever had. I am not kidding. I am not kidding. You guys are so much fun to chat with, and so engaged, so turned on, hilarious, very, very funny. And I feel more at home here than I felt in most places I've ever been. And I just really want to thank you for that graciousness, that intelligence, that engagement, and that downright hospitality. And the other thing I'll take is that if you ever in Australia refer to footy as footer, they will kill you. So sorry about that. But thank you for a great evening.
Ladies and gentlemen, please thank Stefan Molyneux and Lauren Southern.
Thank you. Thank you. And thank you for a high five there. Thank you so much. Thank you.